Shalom, shalom, mishpachah. This is Emah Ahavah from Ahavah's Way. Welcome back to another episode. I'm continuing with the rape and molestation, the R&M series. You'll see it as R&M on the video, but it is rape and molestation. And as you know, if you saw the previous video, I talked much about my experience. Yes, and I did it without the details of what happened. Trust me, the details, I do remember them. But at the same time, it isn't necessary because I believe that many of you who are listening may have gone through this and you have your own experience. But I wanted to share that I had to get some help in this situation because I recognized several years ago that there was something going on with me. And I found out that that had a major, major part of the disconnect with human beings, with myself, wanting to feel like a person when I felt so not worthy of even being around and constantly asking, why am I here? So I want to first say that if it wasn't for the Most High waking me up to come to know him, his love for me, and that same love that he has for you, he has not forgotten me. He has not forgotten you. He knows and he saw it all. And I know that he wants us healed and delivered. Whether it's a woman or a man, it matters not. He wants us all to be healed and delivered from those kinds of situations. So let's get to it. As I said, I didn't have a relationship when I was a child. And those things happened to me when I was from 8 to about 11 or 12. And then the last time I was 15. The molestation was the first series, and then the rape was a one-time thing, which just really kind of knocked me completely out. I had no knowledge or understanding. I had a knowledge that there is a God, but I had no relationship. I did not know his word. I didn't know the purpose of him. I didn't know nothing. And so basically, I went through life until I started going to church, understanding a little bit about who God is. And that's who he was in the church to me. But where I am now, he is Yahuwah, my Elohim. And I came to understand his word and started seeing in the New Testament how much he loved his people, how much he loved us. And I didn't take it as deeply as I did until I came into this walk. I'll explain that later. But in the meantime, I'm going to say that when I was 21, after all of these events happened, after going through all of the anger and the hurt and the hatred, the fear, the low self-esteem, the degradation, is like I felt lower than anything or anyone. I felt I was the lowest thing walking the earth because I couldn't understand why something like this would happen to me. I hadn't done anything to anyone that I knew of. Was I chosen for this? I don't know. I was beginning to wonder, why would this happen to me? What did I do? Am I that bad of a person where somebody would have such a wicked heart towards a girl? I didn't say a grown woman. I'm going to say a child that is innocent. And it's beyond my belief. I didn't understand how a man could do something like that to a girl, to a child, and how much it affected me. I didn't get the understanding until later. All I knew is that I was in a place of darkness, that I never saw light. I never saw understanding until I became older and sought counseling. I stayed with my cousins for a couple of months because I had separated from my first husband and my daughter was just months old. And when I stayed, she said, "Sure, you can come out here." I mean, she had 6 kids, her husband, dogs. It was family. It was a big family, and they were always laughing, and it was always a lot of joy there. So, but then I found out that in the midst of me going there, that I had to go to church every time they went. And I thought, okay, they're going to church once a week. I'm cool. No, they went to church 5, 6 days a week. I was like, what in the world? But I had a lot of laughter and a lot of joy. The hatred that I had for myself, I started experiencing a different kind of love. The love that they had for their niece, their nephew, the love that their cousins had, but my cousins had for me. And it was cool. But the church just did not do a lot for me. I didn't understand all of the stuff. Uh, the choirs marching in with their robes, singing the songs and stuff. And they talked me into joining the choir, and I joined. And um, I can't even explain the experience because I found myself just looking around. I learned some of the songs, but they didn't grab me. They didn't. It wasn't anything that made me want to draw closer to the Most High. When I left a couple of months later, when I left my cousins and my aunt and uncle a couple of months later, I went to my mother's house and I got a job at Security Pacific Bank on 10th Avenue in Washington. I was a teller. And I got a phone call from a friend that asked me about, did I want to be with Ike and Tina? That whole story will come later, but within a week, I quit my job and I became one of the Ikettes, and I traveled with Ike and Tina Turner, the Ike and Tina Turner Review, for about 5 years. It was a great experience, but I'm gonna go back to my subject. I don't want to get lost. Um, there were things that I recognized in myself even then touring with them. I was so withdrawn. I was the one that was real quiet. I didn't have a lot of laughter. I didn't have a lot of I wasn't one that was outgoing. And if they were talking about press conferences and different things when we went to the European tours, I was withdrawn. I didn't want to speak, and I kind of stayed in the shadows. I stayed in the corners and sat between the girls, kind of sitting back because I just didn't want to talk. I wasn't that person. I wasn't that forthcoming about my life or about being with Ike and Tina or about anything. I just wanted to sing and I just wanted to dance. That's the bottom line. But I saw a lot of things. I saw a lot of things. I learned a lot of things. And in that realm, I could call it maybe starstruck. Not that I was a star, but people grabbed on the Ikettes just about as much as they grabbed on Tina. They were gravitating to us as dancers, as performers, and that wasn't a comfortable place for me either. Why? Because I was afraid of people. I was afraid of how they would perceive me, if someone else is going to come along and hurt me again. So I was very withdrawn to be a full-fledged human. I just felt like I was just here living out my days and didn't know what was going to happen the next day. I didn't know what was going to happen the next month. I didn't have life to look forward to. I had things that I loved to do, but did I ever feel that I was going to accomplish any of it? I didn't actually. But when I ended up doing that, it made me feel a little bit better about myself. Not much. I was involved in a couple of relationships that turned sour, extremely sour. And one of them, if I never see him again, it'll be too soon. Um, But shortly after that, my first marriage, which was extremely abusive, physically, mentally, and emotionally. So that didn't help me as a human to feel that I was any value to anybody. And the mixture is that when we feel this way, we are looking, well, who is this God that people are talking about? Because where was he if he's almighty, if he's all of this and all of that? Where was he when all of this was happening? So I didn't really get an answer until later. And I realized he was there all along. I realized that I went through that. Not I went through it for purpose, but it brought purpose in my life because now I can help others with this. Why? Because sometimes I can recognize some things in people that have gone through this, their apprehension. Others, for instance, women, they cover up with makeup. The way they dress, they hide themselves in way, but knowing that they still had to deal with life. Then there's some that become overly flamboyant. They're loud and they're boisterous and they're what do they call it? What is the word? It's bullyish. They don't trust anybody, so they guard themselves by being brutal. And there's so many different characteristics that come from that. Some people become severely unreserved for themselves. They won't even protect themselves. They say, "Oh, well, this is gonna happen anyway," you know. And I think at one point I was even that person. Why fight? Because there's not gonna be. I'm not gonna win anyway. And that's where I was. That's really where I was. But everybody doesn't have the same results to the same trauma. And if we don't recognize that trauma in our family members, like I mentioned before, if we don't look at our loved ones and recognize that something is off kilter, they are on a journey to be an adult with major issues. And people will and people will ask, what is wrong with them? What's funny is, though, they don't ask it out loud. And they don't pray for them. They just go away and say there's something wrong with that person. So some of the effects I already spoke about. I didn't have anybody to talk to. I didn't trust anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody because I didn't know what their response would be. I didn't know what they would feel, what they would think of me. Would they blame me for it? I mean, that's what the police officers and the governments do. For women, they don't believe them when they say they've been raped. If you're not bleeding or cut or got bruises and stuff, they don't believe you've been raped. They think that it was a willful act. So all of these things that happen to people, women, girls, I should say, and boys, they don't know what to do with it because it brings the shame. When I was young, I did not have a voice. That's why I didn't tell my mother. That's why I didn't tell my dad. That's why I didn't tell my sisters. I didn't tell my sisters for that reason. I'm the oldest. So what do I look like trying to get solace from a 8-year-old, 6-year-old, 2-year-old? What does that look like for a girl who's been raped at 15? How does that bring any resolve for her to tell her younger sister? So what's the point? That was my thoughts. Maybe somebody else may have felt that it was a good thing. Maybe that was their way to get it out and nobody else would be able to tell about it. I already talked about being withdrawn. I was very withdrawn. And that came from that. It came from the assaults. It came from not trusting people. It came from not being able to tell anybody. As a child, I had nobody that I could tell that to, that I could trust. Nobody. So I ended up with suffering from these things. Suffering from low self-esteem, like I said before. It wasn't an easy life. Okay. As an adult, I had low self-esteem throughout most of my adult life. I was never pretty enough, smart enough. I was just never enough for anybody, at least I thought. But I've been proposed to, marriage. And there's only one that I can think of that I should have never left. But that's neither here nor there. When I was in the church, as I said earlier, we didn't discuss things like this. We rarely talked about what we wore. We didn't talk about things that we go through. I remember a woman in Denver, Colorado, when I was living there. She stopped going to the church because her husband was physically abusing her for over 20 years. When she went to the pastor to let him know what was going on, he said, well, I don't know what to tell you. So she left the church and she never went back. She said, if that's what the kind of answer I'm going to get from a place where I'm supposed to get help, then I don't want it. And she never went back. She shared that with me when I was living in Denver. And as a result, I can't even remember her name. What was her name? Joan's mother. She watched you. Ernestine. Mama Ernestine. She's been gone for years. But man, that woman loved my family, my daughter, Adrielle, my son, Chill, Keon, and Aisha too. It was just an amazing time there. But anyway, I'm gonna close out this one. If any of you have any questions, I hope you put them in your comments, because I'll know a little bit more of what it is that you might want to hear about in this series. But in the meantime, the next episode, I'm going to go through the scriptures of which were given to me, and I know why they were given to me, and I'll be able to break all of that down for you. But in the meantime, I pray that the Most High touches your heart and brings you healing and deliverance. If you've gone through this, I pray that you just surrender your will and learn how to forgive. Yes, it's hard to forgive, especially for something like that. But you have to forgive in order to free yourself up for the Most High to come in and do what he needs to do. And that was the first thing that I had to do, was to forgive those who assaulted me. Again, it was not easy, but it's a beginning, and it doesn't take a day. It doesn't take a second. The second that you say, I forgive whoever it is, whether you know their name or not. Once you do that, it's a process. And I pray that the Most High leads you and guides you. And if you need someone that you want to talk to or counsel with, leave that in my in the comments. Or I think that's the only way right now, huh? A personal message? Okay, that's what a DM is. A direct message, a DM. DM me, and I'll get whatever information I can to you. And that is the only subject that I will respond to. Um, and I appreciate you listening in, and I hope that you get something from it. Anyway, I love you all. I pray the Most High's blessing be upon you, His peace lead and guide you, and that the blood of Yahushua covers you. In Yahushua's name, hallelujah and Ahavah.